I first became aware of a sort of a strange music or a new music or new excitement and vitality in music, I think when I went to the University of North Texas, University of North Texas in 1954. There were some great records being played, from Johnny Ace to Laverne Baker to Elvis Presley. And that'd be the summer, that'd be the fall of 54, 55. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I went back home during the holidays from the university, and we played a thing at a honky-tonk in West Texas. And I thought it was coming up to midnight for the new year, and someone requested Shake, Rattle, and Roll. And I didn't know that, but I knew part of it. So at the bewitching hour, we started playing Shake, Rattle, and Roll. And according to my watch, I looked at the clock on the wall, and it said about 9 minutes till. So I was trapped into doing 9 minutes of Shake, Rattle, and Roll. By the time that was over, I was converted, so to a strong backbeat. I think that's when the rhythm caught up with the blues and the melody and everything. It was terrific.
At the time, this music sprung on the American public and records were starting to be bought. It was a kind of new thing, outlaw music, just different. And a lot of people badmouthed it to a degree because the mainstream Perry Como type middle of the road, which was perfectly fine, was holding forth at the time. When you started recording and when you started playing this music, did you think it was ever going to last and become the music of today?
No, when I was really committed to rock and roll, I was trying to express myself in a new way, sort of. We all were, Elvis and myself and everybody at Sun Records and at Chess Records and all the independents. It seemed to spring from the independents and not the major labels. I remember just writing what I wanted to write, the way I felt. It was more or less a feeling music. Not that other music is not feeling, but it was more of a feeling music. And could have come from the rhythm. And I wasn't really aware that it was a new music altogether. There was a new excitement, and I just played and sang, for my part, how I felt. And I was hoping that I could last, as an artist, that whatever I had to offer would last, but I didn't really worry about it, and I don't think many of us did. We were just working and trying to get a little recognition, trying to make $1, and but very much in love with what we were doing. And the future, of course, every year that it lasted longer, I felt a little more comfortable. I felt better each year that went by, and every year seemed to get better and better.
Sun Records was one of the birthplaces of a sound that influenced the entire country and the entire music scene. And you were there in those days. What was it that Sam Phillips had at Sun Records that created this mushroom?
Sam Phillips started recording black artists in about 1952-3, and Elvis came by and wanted to make a record for his mom, and so I don't know whether Sam even knew it or not. He had a good feel for things. He had a good sense of what sounded good and what moved people. But by the time I got there, which was 1956, Elvis had already recorded an album which was sold to RCA, and so he was gone from the label, not gone from Memphis. We did meet my first tour. But the thing at Sun was, it was like a workshop, which was rare in those days. There was a small workshop in Clovis, New Mexico, where Buddy Knox and Jim Bowen and Buddy Holly worked, and where I made my first record. And at Sun, it was the same thing. You could go in and try to make a record. And if it was exciting enough, well, you know, it was released. Now, Sam's advice to me, and I think to most of his artists, he would bring out an Arthur Crudup record, or he'd bring out Mystery Train, or That's All Right. And he said, sing like that. And what he meant was sing with that much enthusiasm and that much feeling. And he didn't explain it that way. He said, sing like that. And of course, I couldn't sing like that. None of us could. But we sort of got the message. And it was a good place to be at the time. Wasn't really big time, but and from our point of view, there were other strongholds, other small places like New Orleans and Chicago making good records. You know, we looked to those other places as well, and it was just a good place to go try out things.
When you first started, I mean, Ooby Dooby was your first hit, a regional hit, but you know, it put you on the map in a way. And it was more of a rock and roll type feeling, up tempo. And of course, the ballad is what really, you know, you defined your style with. Now, when you were at Sun and they were singing, were they sing in a certain way? I mean, were you singing the kinds of things that you wanted to sing there, or were you singing to, you know, at the beginning to fit into a trend?
I felt very inhibited at Sun because rock and roll was so new to me that, and I had this craving to do love songs or sentimental things or romantic songs with a beat, though, you know, something with a medium tempo. But each time I would try that, why, I remember as Sam Phillips was making records, a young guy came by named Jack Clement, and he was engineering when Sam didn't. And he was there when Jerry Lee Lewis came by to make a record, and they, that afternoon, cut a record called Whole Lot of Shaking Going On. But anyway, I went to do about my third record for Sun, and I sang a few songs, and Jack said, look, Roy, he said, you'll never be able to sing a ballad. He said, forget about that, and let's just go with, you know, this rock and roll, rockabilly stuff. And I see Jack from time to time, and he said, you're still trying to sing a ballad, aren't you? So, no, I didn't feel comfortable at Sun, and I think well, the thing was that when I got to Monument Records, for instance, and they let me do what I wanted to do, we started having success immediately, a big success. But I had a lot of fun at Sun Records with hanging out with Elvis and Jerry Lee and going on the road with Carl and Johnny and everybody. It was a great time. It was very exciting.
Now, I've read that you think that sound at Sun was responsible for you developing such a strong voice. I mean, you've got such a brilliantly strong voice. But those early times, did that, you know, help you develop something?
Yeah, the thing was with Sun Records, it was very much like, I heard an interview by Harry James once, and he said he started playing in a circus, blowing the trumpet in a circus, when he was a young boy and developed a leather lip. And the thing was that if Harry had not been able to play all evening at the circus, well, then he wouldn't get paid. The same thing with us, basically, because I have a very strong voice, blessed with a strong voice, and so did Presley, so did Johnny Cash, and Jerry Lee, all of us, in fact. And that's from having to sing, I think, over the instruments in the studio. It was a very small studio at Sun, and cranking up the amplifiers and the drums and all that, and the technology wasn't such that they could pick up a voice as they should, so you had to sing louder and longer. Of course, if you couldn't sing, you didn't get the record made, or if you didn't sing at the dances for 6 hours, you didn't get paid. So I think it's, you know, in part responsible for all the big voices, you know.
Cut.
Marker?
Boy, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when I say Chuck Berry?
Maybelline. I was doing a television show in Odessa, Texas, and wasn't writing many songs. In fact, in order to be a success at the time, television was fairly new to the area. And I learned everybody's songs to get, 10 songs a program. And Chuck was tailor-made for me. It was terrific, Once he gets a song written just right, why, anybody can sing it,
What do you think was unique about his sound, or unique about him?
My first impression of Chuck was that he was a black country singer, sort of. It was rhythm and blues, but it wasn't so rhythm and blues at the time. Sort of with a country flavor. It may sound very strange, but it was. I still feel that way. I still feel very strongly that Chuck might have been a mixture of first rock and roll, rhythm and blues, and then some country. His way with words and things. But I learned all of his songs, and I was in Odessa, Texas in '55 and '6 when Elvis came to town, and he sang Maybelline, and we sang Maybelline, and we'd go play dances or jamboree things. Everybody sang Chuck's songs, then and now, and yeah, it was something that you didn't question. You didn't say, well, I wonder if that's going to be a hit. Nobody ever did. We just learned them and started right in,
What's your favorite Chuck Berry song?
My favorite Chuck Berry song oh boy, that's a good one. Could be Memphis, but I mean, how do you leave out Sweet Little 16 and all that, all that clever stuff, and Nadine and all that. All of them are my favorites.
What the coming out of Texas, and at the time the emergence of this music, which is really a combination of white and black music, and performers starting to mix and play in the same concerts and so forth. What was that like?
As a singer and a songwriter and all, the impact of black and white artists and Latin American artists and all, it wasn't strong with me. I mean, I didn't know any difference. I used to go wherever somebody was playing music, I'd sit down and be at home and feel good about it. I think that's I think the mixture made the music. I think the different influences made the music and made it exciting. I remember touring all over the country in '56. We drove by station wagon and Cadillacs and all, but no big buses or flying. We'd drive everywhere and play all these shows, and there didn't seem to be any difference in the North and the South, the East and the West. The audiences loved us all. It was terrific.
One of the things that I'm interested in, because when you first start playing, at the very beginning, whether it's when do you go professional, when are you amateur, and so on, day jobs, musicians, and was there some work that you did before you started playing music as a profession?
I tried all kinds of jobs. I always knew that I would be a singer. And my father asked me when I was about 6 or 7, if I was going to be a policeman or a fireman or what. I said, no, I'll be a singer. And but I tried everything. I was a paper boy. I sacked groceries. I worked for the county. Shoe shine boy. And then between high school and college, the first year, I worked for El Paso Natural Gas Company in Texas, and very hard laboring work. And that spurred me on to greater things, inspired me to be a singer, a good one, because I didn't enjoy that at all. But I tried the jobs, and I really always wanted to be just successful enough that I wouldn't have to work, that I could write songs all day. And then, of course, more success, and then I wanted to be a hit recording artist, and then I wanted to be all things. But no, I left the day jobs behind a long time ago.
Influences on you, musical influences on you.
My musical influences would go back all the way to, in the early days, to country singers like when I was 6 years old or so. Roy Acuff, Ernest Tubb, Bob Wills, all the Texas thing. Growing into almost nearly everybody influenced me. I loved music from such an early age. The big songs of the day were Born to Lose, and as I got into to junior high, there was people like Lefty Frizzell and Perry Como, and then into high school it was Shaboom by the Crew Cuts and Eddie Fisher, and then it sort of swung into Mint Julep and things like that, into the Bill Haley, Chuck Berry, Elvis Presley thing, which is still with us. It seems to have all come together at the right time for me. I've been in on all of it. Seems to be.
Trademarks. When you think of Roy Orbison, you think of that incredible voice, and you also think of the sunglasses. Where did they come from?
I was flying to Alabama in '63 for a show, an outdoor show, and I left my clear pair of glasses on the airplane. So I just had the shades, and so I was very embarrassed to go on stage in '63 in Alabama, the sunshades. But I had to go on anyway, and I need the glasses to see, so I used them. And then I flew to New York and then on to London for a tour with a group called the Beatles. And all I had was the sunglasses. So the tour was such a success, and we did so well. I think internationally it made the Beatles and made me a big star. And I had the dark glasses on in the pictures, so a sort of instant image. Not something I designed, though, because I was a bit embarrassed about it. But it sort of stuck with me, and so now when people expect to see me, they expect the glasses, so sort of stuck with it.
What do you think the basic element is of rock and roll? What is that core thing that makes it different than other music and has made it survive?
I think the rhythm. You wouldn't have anything if you just had rhythm, but without the rhythm, I remember all the early country songs that I heard. It was a rhythm, built-in rhythm, but not drums and things like that. And even early Presley. There was definitely a rhythm in the man, in the voice, and a rhythm in the guitar, and the guitars and bass, but there were no drums even on his early records. And so the rhythm has to be all the way through you, and then comes the melody. After the melody, then the lyric, I think. It all has to stand up in turn. If it doesn't have a good beat, then you're not going to get anybody to listen. And then if it's not catchy or not a good melody, it won't hold up. People will forget it. And then as they listen to the lyrics, they have to hold up. They have to mean something, be meaningful. And I think that's the progression of the way the sound is, the way it hits me anyway.
In terms of stage performance, and I know in the early days of Sun, the whole thing of rock and roll, there was a different sense when, it wasn't like going to a concert with a baby grand on stage and a crooner standing at the microphone. There was a different, more active performance style. How did that evolve?
I had played shows for many years before I became a professional. We would play things like the Sandhills Jamboree. I then got on television and played dances. And then I went on tour. And it was very, very strange because all of a sudden, just from one week to the next, almost, people started tearing your clothes off. They started jumping up and down and dancing in the aisles and going crazy over this music. And the thing was, the more excited the audience got, the more we played, the harder and faster and louder and more wonderful we were. So it was sort of I don't know, there was no inhibition. I used to dance all over the stage, to go crazy, and so did the audience. It was a bit scary if you played for a few thousand people and they got a hold of you. It was very scary, in fact, but it was wonderful. To this day, when I perform live, I like people to let me know they enjoy it, and I let them know in turn. So,
great. That's it. Roy, there's a kind of common thread that flows through a lot of artists or singers, songwriters at the beginning when they enter the world of the commercial world. And you write as a love, and then of course you've got to learn how to go out there and sell it. And in wanting to sell it so badly, sometimes you sell it cheap. At the very beginning of your career, was it tough to break into this business? And in fact, do you think that was it learning by hard knocks?
First turning professional and wanting to get paid for things, it always came second. I think to most artists it does come second. But then you would like for it to come, and sometimes it doesn't. I remember that there were a lot of thieves around when I started in the business, and I'm sure any artist would say the same thing. But cheaply is the word. Yeah, you sell yourself very cheaply. And I remember writing songs, and there was a fellow named Slim Willett asked me how my BMI was running, for instance. Now, I didn't know what he was talking about. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, when they play your songs on the radio, they pay you. And I said, no, they don't. And he said, oh, yes, they do. So things like that. I mean, I went, and then I told Carl Perkins. I said, when they play Blue Suede Shoes on the air, they're supposed to pay you. And he said, no, they're not. And I said, oh, yes, they are. So then we raced back to Memphis to talk to Sam. But also, we were getting like 3% at Sun. Everybody else was getting 5%. Chuck was getting 5%, I think. So it's a very difficult thing. I couldn't feel any more for a young new artist, coming into the business or going into the business than I do. It seems like in your enthusiasm to get to be noticed and for people to take you seriously at what you're doing, you have to give up nearly everything that you're entitled to. But if you stay in it long enough and keep your ears open and nose to the grindstone and take your knocks and accept a few things, then eventually I think all good things come to you. You need to beware when you begin, though.
As an artist, and I consider a great songwriter, I mean, you had a circuitous route. I mean, you came to Sun and played rock and roll, and then weren't satisfied artistically. And I'm sure, as you said, people say you'll never be a ballad singer. What went into, and how did you come to writing "Only the Lonely" and "Crying" and "Running Scared" and all those great songs?
West Texas is a very lonely place. There's not much to do in West Texas after football season. So I would write songs, and we didn't live in a big house where I had a room to write a song, so I would go sit in the car and write songs, and that's where I wrote "Only the Lonely." Good friend Joe Melson and I wrote this song in a car out in front of my house. And I don't know, I think it was, and it wasn't for money. It was just writing for the love of writing. And the same way with most of the early songs. And I think it continued all the way through Pretty Woman, even to today. But the thing was, the songs became recognized and became #1 hits, some of them, and eventually standards, some of them. But writing "Running Scared," for instance, it was It took us about 30 minutes at the most, and not too long to record it, and it was #1. And then Crying was the next thing we wrote, because the pressure was that we had another record coming. We had to write a song for the next record. And I remember early in my career traveling with people who had just one hit record, and I had none. So, but they would sing if they had a hit record about anything, a pair of pants. Then the next song would be about a pair of socks, and the next tune would be about a shirt, and the next one about a hat. So I just didn't want to go down the same path, and so we wrote these songs. The thing about being a singer writing a song, you write the song the way you want to sing it, which makes it sound a little different, and it turns out to be your very own. And there's not a lot of stylizing to do as a singer when you go to the studio. You sing it as you wrote it, and you write it as you sing it. So it's sort of of a piece, you know, of a set thing. And but
let me ask you, on Running Scared, which has to be one of the most unique and compelling ballads I've ever heard. I mean, you were saying you write it the way you're going to sing it. Well, the way you sing it at the end is, you know, just absolutely floors you when you hear that voice. Now, you couldn't possibly sing that song unless you had that voice. I mean,
well, you know, people said on the session when I was recording Running Scared, for instance, I didn't have any formal training as a writer, and so I wrote. I didn't, you know, something high or low didn't make any difference to me, and wrote Running Scared with a high ending, but I was singing it very softly. And when we got into the studio, technology hadn't changed that much. And I remember the producer saying, you know, he said, we're losing the end of the song. He said, if you can't hit that note a little harder, or those notes, he said, we'll lose the record. And of course, everybody heard that in the studio, and I was embarrassed by that and upset and a little bit angry. And I said, run it one more time, please. And so then I hit the note. And everybody looked around, and there were 30-something musicians in that little studio. But those things come with the doing. If you're trying very hard and you're fairly innocent and your motives are fairly pure, then good things happen to you. The good Lord seems to smile on you and give you a little extra each time as you go. So from Running Scared through Crying, which was even more of a vocal experience, all the way through Pretty Woman and all, was probably an evolutionary thing. It was a growth thing on my part.
The world discovering rock and roll, and the world discovering Roy Orbison and the songs. I mean, was that a surprise to you? I mean, you do the songs, they're hits, and then to go to Europe, for instance, you travel with the Beatles, and to find that they know your work, that your work has influenced them, and that, you know, there's a second generation of your work.
It's very gratifying as a songwriter to see that the songs have held up a good while, and as an artist to be recognized in Europe and Australasia and foreign climes. It's at the time I was writing and singing and touring, I didn't think about that. I didn't think of posterity and didn't think of the lasting impression or the influences that, you know, might be generated. Just kept going and doing, and with a certain amount of excitement and a certain flair and a lot of luck, just kept going. But it's wonderful to see, you know, these days if a song lasts 20 years, you've pretty much got a standard. And as a writer, to hear other people do your songs, like I'm sure Chuck would appreciate people doing his songs. It's just a wonderful thing that it's a one-time thing for you, and then you hear a new generation and someone else and all different variations and versions of songs. It's wonderful.
Again, at that period of time with Chuck Berry and what he represented to artists and also just in terms of a general audience, what do you think, you know, just in terms of summing him up, what do you think his contribution is?
I think Chuck's contribution, for me at least, he's the first songwriter-singer that I know of. there were others, but not with that much rhythm and that much, the way the lyrics rolled off the tongue, the way they stabbed, the way they cut, and the way they sort of seemed to lay there with the drums, all the lyric. It's just a free-form expression. You know, you couldn't find an earlier example of a singer-songwriter, guitarist. And he did the same thing with the guitar that he did with his voice and with his writing. A complete person. I've seen Chuck, well, we've toured together, and Chuck comes out by himself. You know, there's another group there, but Chuck's always by himself, and that's all he needs is himself. And the other's just icing on the cake. The first great songwriter, singer, guitar player.
Okay, thank you so much for watching. And just before you go, did you know I have a free book, 7 Habits of Calm and Happy People? I read a lot of books on this and really condensed it into this with some exercises too. I think you're gonna like it if you want more peace and happiness in your life. So you can find it at findcalm.com/book. Findcalm.com/book. So